What's the worst you've ever suffered? Great icebreaker question, huh? Happy New Year, everybody. I'm back. The Glog has returned, and I'm in front of the camera yet again because this feels just a little more personal, you know? Think about that question, okay? What's the worst that you've ever suffered? You have to leave it in the comments. Some of these things are quite personal to a lot of us, and for good reason. One of the worst times that I ever suffered was starting middle school. I had a tough time adjusting to the system. I didn't have a lot of friends, and I felt very isolated and alone. Think about the times in your life where you have suffered and therefore had to endure a lot. Today, we are going to be tackling the idea of the New Year's resolution, as well as looking at how we grow our character and our hope. And you'll see where I'm going with this in just a second, so stay with me. Hope 2020 is starting off great. A little personal thing about me, I just realized that I need glasses, because apparently I don't have 20/20 vision, I have 20/40 vision, which is like the worst vision. Go figure. But that is, in a way, something I'm suffering with, that I really cared, but especially when driving, I want to be able to see. But perhaps you've suffered even worse, and I definitely can say I have suffered worse. Whether it's physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, we all have encountered suffering in some way, shape, or form. And what I'm getting at today is that suffering is not only important, but necessary. Why? We'll talk about it. A few months ago, I started getting into exercising, trying to eat healthier. I'm not doing the best job at it, but I'm trying. I've lost about 20 pounds, give or take. You can pat me on the back if you want, but I'm not asking for that. What I'm asking for is for you to listen to what I'm about to say. And that is that when you go to the gym, first of all, everybody's sweaty. I don't know why it's air conditioned. But when you go into the gym, in order for you to build muscle, all right? In order for you to build up strength, wherever it is, arms, chest, endurance training, legs, you have to hurt a little bit. The idea of growing muscle strength is the fact that when you work out a muscle, you're actually tearing the muscle tissue inside your body, tearing the tissue apart, and therefore it has to reform stronger. And then, of course, when you go to the gym the next day, you rip it up again, and it has to grow stronger. And day by day, you get muscle strength. If you don't go to the gym, your muscles won't get torn, so that's a plus, but they'll never grow. They'll never get stronger. In life, it's similar to going to the gym. In order to be a stronger person, you have to, in a sense, get torn. You feel me? I'll explain this a little more in a second. Our key verse for today is going to be found in the book of Romans, the 5th chapter. And we start off learning about justification through faith, but we get into a really interesting discussion here in verse 3. And verse 3 says, "Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance character, and character hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us." What is this verse saying? It's saying to be thankful for suffering, to glory in suffering. Why would we glory in suffering? Suffering is a bad thing, isn't it? Who's to say? It's bad right now, but in the long run, is it so bad? When I was in middle school adjusting and not having any friends, in order for me to break out of my comfort zone, I had to push myself. And in a way, tear those muscles to reform them. I had to break free of a shell and grow. Now I'm a lot more confident when I talk to people, and I can be around a lot of people at one given time and carry on conversations, something I used to not be able to do. But in order to do that, I had to hurt a little bit anyways. And again, this isn't all physical. I'm using the analogy of a physical gym to get across the point that in life, suffering is necessary for character growth. And as we see in this particular passage, suffering produces perseverance, which perseverance then, through that suffering, produces your character, and your character brings about hope. And we find hope in God. But God puts situations in our lives where we have to persevere relying on the strength of Christ. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Sometimes in life we ask for strength. We ask for, I don't know, any particular thing. Let's say we ask God, help me to be a stronger person. God's not going to just, boom, make you a stronger person. He's going to give you opportunities to rely and rest in his strength and to grow as a person. I hate to use this analogy because it's kind of corny, but if you ever saw the movie, is it Bruce Almighty or Evan Almighty? In one of them, he talks about God not giving you honesty, but giving you opportunities to be honest. You feel me? So that's kind of where I'm going with this whole analogy. There are many verses in the Bible, a lot of different passages, Isaiah, Jeremiah, lots of different books. Even in the New Testament, we see this analogy come up. The idea of a potter and clay. And there's a neat little balance in here, which is interesting. I don't know if you've ever been to a pottery place, but when you go to these places, they start you off with just the essentials, the clay, the paint, all that kind of stuff. You have to form the clay, which kneading clay is actually tougher than you would think. It's a workout in and of itself because the clay is usually tough. You have to break down the clay, push it, and add pressure to it. Then you take the formed clay, let's say you're making a cup, you put the clay cup into a furnace and let it heat up so it will get harder and stronger. The idea of kneading clay and putting it in a furnace seems like no big deal. But if you were clay, I would imagine that would hurt pretty bad. Clay, of course, can't feel anything, but if it did, it would probably hurt. And in the same way, I think sometimes God treats us like clay. He is the potter, and we are the clay. And who are we to really ask God, what are you doing with me and my clay? It is up to the potter to design the clay. But in order for God to take you from a lump of clay to a beautiful vase or a cup, you have to go through the kneading process and the furnace. And when you go through those difficult times, you will find that you're growing in endurance, character, and hope, as the verse in Romans discussed. So what are the practical things that we can take away from this? One important thing, and this is a tough thing, especially for me, is that we need to get out of our comfort zones. Comfort zones are nice because they surround us and we feel protected inside them. I'm an introvert by nature, so stepping out of that comfort zone to me would be trying to make a new friend, trying to ask somebody out on a date, going to a party, things like that. You're stepping over boundaries. And if you know me in person, you might know that I can do most social things now because I have stepped out of those boundaries, whether at work or at school or just in my personal time. I'm trying to jump over the comfort zone. In actuality, a comfort zone is really a comfort barrier, not protecting you from what's outside, but keeping you inside the barrier. And as long as you'll stay in there, you can't really grow much. You know what I mean? When you watch a movie, let's take Star Wars, for instance. In order for the main hero to have character development, what storytellers call a character arc. There has to be a conflict. And ultimately, the conflict or the suffering produces endurance. And when that character endures enough, they grow character, hence the name, and overall can produce hope. You see that in a character like Luke Skywalker. His parents are murdered. He feels abandoned and alone. He learns endurance through the Force and through his training, grows as a character, and ultimately not only has hope, but becomes hope for the rebellion and for the galaxy, really. That's a fictional example, but it's a good way of showing you that by pushing through difficult times, times that will come up in our lives, we can find hope. So ultimately, if there's something bad in your life, conflicting, maybe you're suffering right now, know that God isn't punishing you. He's not abandoned you. He is right alongside you. We have a God that understands our temptations and our sufferings because Jesus suffered. He knows what you and I are going through. And he loves you a whole lot and wants you to know that you can rely on his strength and you can get through a difficult time. So instead of asking God, why am I in a tough situation? Instead, maybe we can ask him, how can I grow through this situation? How are you needing me? How are you strengthening that muscle? And how can I be the person that Christ has created us to be? That is the message for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have a question or a comment, leave it in the comment section below because I want to hear from you. Happy 2020. Thank you for watching The Glog.